All right, start with an opening statement from Coach and then take questions.
8 o'clock tip tomorrow night. Looking forward to having our students back. Big part of college basketball is having your students. So really appreciate year two here, how we're moving in the right direction with student attendance. We had some really good non-conference home games when the students were here, so we're excited about that and just trying to get the word out to all of them. Get in free with your student ID. Encourage everybody to get to the game early and know the weather. It's really cold out there, so it's hard to do the whole camp out deal, but doors open 2 hours early for the students. We've got a new student lounge concession stand on the ground level of the arena. We're always trying to do things that are student friendly. It's the most important group that we have is the student body. Season ticket holders, extremely important to us, all of our Ole Miss fans, period. But we have a special relationship with our students that we continue to build. So if you guys in your own way can just encourage the students to understand the process, doors open 2 hours early. Get to the game early. The best seats in the pavilion are for the students. Once the bleachers fill up, we have other really good seats in the building for students too. So making sure they know that too. We have the capacity to handle many more students than just the lower level bleacher seats. So appreciate you guys on that.
Chris, in post-game in Starkville, I know you were talking about, having to go back and look at some of the front court issues that happened on Saturday. Just looking back on it, just what was the most difficult part of this, the matchup in the paint?
Well, we started the game really poorly, and it wasn't necessarily the front line. It's just Ole Miss basketball. We can't dig that kind of hole. Now, you're going to get a great shot early, a great punch early. We set the game up into 10 4-minute games, but you got to hold serve. You got to compete early. And so our disappointing start, think about it. It's not just complex math. When the game ends, the score's tied, but 4 or 5 minutes into the game, we're down double digits. So really, in a lot of ways, there's the difference in the game. Now you're clawing back to try to get back to even and try to get a lead. And you just ask yourself, what if we could have eliminated a couple of those mistakes? What if we could have played just a couple possessions better early? And so that was really the focal point of the game. In terms of lineups and players, we, did what we had to do to get back in the game. It was obviously working, but there, we got to get our minutes spread a little bit more across. But again, in those games, you're just trying to survive, get back in the game. So those are decisions coaches make.
It's only been a couple of days, but how have you seen them respond to that game emotionally?
Yet to be determined. I've always thought the next game is the biggest game on the schedule. So it's the same thing after victory too. As a coach, sometimes that's even more challenging when a team wins a game that's perceived by others to be a big game. I've never really understood what that meant. The big game's the next one on the schedule. But it goes both ways. You have some disappointment, some heartbreak. You got to respond quickly. You have some success. You got to get over it pretty quick and respond as well. So, I've said this before. I respect where our guys are coming from in terms of their hearts, their willingness to want to win, to work together. It's been an unselfish group to this point. We got a lot of guys that are pretty secure in who they are in terms of what they've done in their careers before Ole Miss, and so really the objective is to try to win the game. Practice was good yesterday. We'll see.
Coach, I know that Malik didn't have his best game in Starkville, but he's had a huge impact on y'all's success this season. Can you talk about the impact that he's had on the team and how you've seen him grow?
Yeah, D is a talented player. Can do a lot of different things on both ends. He's not a traditional big. He's a positionless player, the kind of guys we like to recruit. He's got a combination of skill and size. His athleticism a little bit sneaky. I think he could play a lot more athletic than he does at times. The thing with him is just consistency. He's playing at this level for the first time in terms of playing minutes. He's at Vanderbilt, but he wasn't getting game opportunity there. So it's really just consistency. I think one of the steps of his development as he continues is to understand, he probably wasn't game planned for earlier this season, but there's no secret that he is now. When you have the type of games he had early in SEC play, give him all the credit. But now the next step is to anticipate, what's coming next, and to try to play the game just possession by possession, just base hit after base hit, We don't, all the pressure of the world's not on him or anybody else on our team. Just do your job each possession. Lastly, on Dia, he's a guy that cares about his craft. He puts in the time. He works. And so you pull for guys like that.
You're clearly tough on Dia, and he seems to respond to that. Is it the reason for that because you realize his potential? Because, we always hear, I'm going to tell you what you're doing wrong the most because I believe you have so much potential. That's what coaches do. Is that one of the reasons why you are tough on him?
Well, that's just coaching. I hope there's not a player out there that we've coached that wouldn't say that we were tough on him. If there's a guy out there at Fort Scott or Seminole or Little Rock, or if there's a guy that's played for us and they can look back after it and say, hey, Coach, you weren't tough on me. I had higher expectations for myself than you had for me. I hope that's not the case. As I sit here today, I'm not perfect, but I don't think that's the case. We try to be hard on all our players. Hard is good. It's where growth comes. You don't have to use the word hard either. You can say the word love. You can say the word care. Bottom line is I have really high expectations for our team, for every player. And so, we try to just give our guys the best chance every day. Some of that's our true telling atmosphere. We don't waste a lot of time worrying about, the format in which the information is presented. We spend all of our time making sure that the information's correct and, what the players need to be successful.
Last thing, what do you think his ceiling is? What do you think Dia's ceiling is as a player?
I think Dia could get paid to play basketball. I think he could make a career of it. He could be one of those guys that, really could not work a day in his life. He could be a pro. He's got a long ways to go, as does everybody else. I think the guys that are projected top 10 picks now have a long ways to go in terms of, being a pro that does this for a living. But Dia's talented. And again, the thing I always come back to him with is he cares. He puts in the time. He wants to be good. He's matured a lot since he's been here. Give him the credit. He's just got to take the next step. And, the step from 1 to 2 and 5 to 6, those are steps a lot of guys can make. The step from 9 to champion, from 4th place to 1st place, from first contract to second contract to a couple of good games versus every game's your game. That's the really hard step. I think he's taken some steps that him and I both knew that he could and would. Now it's, hey, you're playing in the best league in college basketball. You're being game planned against. Can you take that next step? Really difficult to do, but yes, I think Dia can do it.
Ian McHale, his first SEC action, back on the court Saturday night.
It was just good to have him back first. That's really hard to do, to miss basically 4 games. I think he played a little bit in the opener. Limited practice time. So just the fact that he got out there and made some plays and helped his team was positive. The challenge is, without a week to practice or a training camp, we got to get him back in the mold where he can start impacting possessions. But it was really good to see him out there. Our training staff did a great job with him. Our team doctors, Kel deserves most of the credit because he was the one putting in the time to get back.
A&M's roster, it seems like a good chunk of their high producers are guys that were on this team a year ago. But some of those guys, like specifically Wade Taylor, how are they different players than they were a year ago?
Yeah, this is one of the best teams in college basketball. It starts by just understanding they were good last year, and they basically returned their whole team. And the pieces they've added were from the outside looking in, look like perfect fits. I think their combo guard last year was a special player. Radford, was that his name? And then they picked up now with the transfer that's playing really well for him. Not great with names, normally work with the numbers, but obviously added an impact big, a back-to-the-basket center. So to me, it starts with the returners, period. And I think this year's team has an identity. They've overcome some adversity like all teams do, specifically with Taylor not playing a couple games. And so, I think just big picture, A&M to me, and again, I'm not there every day. I don't know anything other than what I see with my own opinion. I think they're one of those teams that could make a run. There would be one of the teams that I think you probably put on 2 hands that you could visualize winning a championship.
I believe A&M leads leads the SEC in offensive rebounds. What do you plan to tell your team on that aspect of the game come Saturday?
A lot of things. You state the obvious. This is who they are. This is their identity, and this is how they do it. It's one thing just to say, "Hey, we got to block out." They're going to crash. It's much more. It's much more detailed than that. There's a method to their madness. I think it's a plan. Some teams, they run a play, they get a shot. To me, teams like this, they run a play, they get the shot, and they continue to run the play. I think there's offensive rebounding strategy, teaching to this. So one thing that we tell our players is to try to give them an understanding of what A&M's trying to get done. No different than most competition. Scouting reports are basically, let's look at this from their point of view. If everything goes right for them, here's their plan. How can we disrupt their plan? So that's kind of scouting the big picture of what we do. But Texas A&M, it's not just the numbers. It's not just the players that have the physical talent to rebound. That's a big part of it. But it's also the tactical way they set up their team and their offense to go get offensive rebounds.
Coach, with 4 of the next 5 against ranked opponents, you guys sitting at 4-1 through 5 games already, how important do you think that start was before going into this gauntlet of 4 of the next 5?
In the next 5 games, what would be the one team that you don't think's ranked?
Well, the only team is Texas that's not ranked, but
Right.
I mean,
In Texas,
previously they're pretty good.
yeah, Texas is probably one of the top 25 teams in college basketball. Incredible talent, maybe the best talent in the league. I get the question. So in years past, that might mean something, but in this league, I literally think everybody in the SEC is worthy of top 25 votes. What we tell our team is no different than any season, any week, any month, any weekend, the way we've always coached. Next game on the schedule is our complete focus, not just players, coaches. Everybody in the organization understands that we play 8 o'clock tomorrow night, so we're 30-something hours to tip, and so that's what we tell our team. We just stay the course.
Have you seen David Barnes progress yet? Put him in the starting lineup since the beginning of SEC play.
Yeah, I think Barnes is a talented player. I think one of his challenges are like most of our transfers. You come from last season's team where you had a lot of success individually and team. Now you're in a new system, new teammates. And so, the one thing that I've encouraged all our players to start with is, can you be your most aggressive self every day? Very similar to kind of the team setup. Victory's going to favor the most aggressive team. Once you get 2 aggressive teams going at it, now it's going to be the team with the fewest mistakes. So back to Barnes, individually, to me, it always starts with that too. Like, simplify. You got a lot of things going in your head. You want to be great. You want to help. Your heart's in the right place. But, can you just get this thing down to one sentence, one word? And to me, that word for Barnes should be aggressive. When Barnes is aggressive, he's physical. He looks to make plays on offense. He looks to make plays on defense. When Barnes is aggressive, I wouldn't trade him for any other player in the country. When Barnes isn't aggressive, he becomes really average really quick. And I would say the same thing about every player on this year's team. So I don't know. I mean, Barnes has a lot of his story yet to be written. Are we going to get the Barnes that was getting 7 or 8 rebounds a game during that stretch where he was really aggressive, looked like an all-SEC type defensive player? Or are we going to get the Barnes sometimes where 20 minutes in the stat sheet, we didn't get much done today? When you watch Barnes play basketball, he doesn't make a lot of mistakes, but he needs to be more aggressive. The objective of the game is not just to get through the game and just kind of make the basketball play. It's to have the courage to be aggressive and go make a play from time to time. So for Barnes, that would be taking the ball to the basket, rebounding on both ends, having the courage to make that play. He's an intelligent guy, cerebral. He can see things. If you watch film with Barnes, it's like he could be one of those guys on TV with the little pin. But sometimes I think he gets in his own way. And so my message with Barnes has been really consistent. Are we getting your most aggressive self? Is this the most competitive version of yourself? If the answer is yes, there's nothing to talk about. He's a real SEC player. When we don't get the most aggressive, why? How can we help you as coaches? Barnes' teammates want him to be aggressive. The coaching staff wants him to be aggressive. That's the deal with Barnes.
Any more questions?
And,
Thanks.
and one last thing if you don't mind, and if it's.
I don't mind. Not at all.
If it's irrelevant, please tell me, but I guess, I don't know if you probably saw the ruling about a week ago, the NCAA talked about, allowing 2 preseason exhibition games and all that. I don't know if you paid attention to that, just what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that was a big one. We absolutely pay attention to that. This year, we had an opportunity to play Illinois here. That was great for so many reasons. A lot of our fans were able to stay the night in Oxford after that football game and go to the game. I think it's great for our students to get the excitement of college basketball going. It could be good for a revenue standpoint. Now with certainly the World of the Collective, the Grove Collective. So those games, they bring a lot of opportunities. Is there a way to make some funds? Is there a way to promote and market our team? From a basketball standpoint, obviously a chance to play against Illinois made our team better. And so, the new ruling, basically, we get 2 cracks at this. I think some coaches still might lean towards the closed-door scrimmage just for the ability to play more than 40 minutes, really get to know your team in a setting. We haven't made that final decision yet, but I think what I would say is we're definitely going to try to play against 2 of the top teams we can play competition-wise. If there's something we can do to please our fans, if there's something we can do to help the Grove Collective raise money. But that was a big rule. It's my understanding, too, that those don't have to be on the weekends now. That was always a challenge because you're playing college football. And so now maybe we could slide one of those games into a Thursday night before a home football game or something like that. But that was a big rule. I think it's what's right for college basketball. In my opinion, it's still not enough. I think they ought to let us play a couple in the summer. I think they ought to give us more than 2 cracks before the season starts. With my small college background, those games are really important to us when we were at McMurray, when we were at Angelo State. I hope that this new rule doesn't hurt Division II basketball in some way, because a lot of D2 basketball, they relied on that exhibition game to get that experience for the players, to get the revenue check, the guarantee check as they call it. So again, just common sense to me. I'm not in those rooms with the people that make the rules, but why not allow all of us Division I schools to play one non-D1? That way we still help basketball at that level. That would make a lot of sense to me. I don't know if that's been talked about or not, but that's what I would do. Let us all play a game or 2 in the summer. Our guys are here anyway. Nobody's missing class. We can play those regionally and on the weekends. We don't have to spend the money at the charter planes and all that. Just make a 100-mile rule in the summer. Why not let us play a non-Division I, maybe before we play the 2 exhibition games, so that we can help basketball. It's what's right for basketball. I know when I was at Angelo State, we got a crack at UTEP. Tim Floyd, my friend, gave us that opportunity, and it was awesome. Those Angelo State guys still talk about that game today. I know when we were at McMurray, off the top of my head, we played Lamar University. Pat Knight was the head coach. He did us a solid. It's a great experience for our players. We were good too. We won one of those games. We were good at McMurray. We were good at Angelo State. So it's not like the other team doesn't benefit too. I don't think there's any Division I coach that would say, well, we don't get any good out of that game. There's some really good basketball players and coaches and teams in NAI and Division II. So that would be something that I would do that makes sense. But that's not me, man. I'm about to go get a corn dog and go watch A&M out-rebound somebody on video. But if ever given the chance to be in one of those rooms, that's what guys like me would maybe bring to those rooms, just some common sense of what's good for all basketball, right? I've coached at all levels. I can tell you what's good for the game. I don't have all the answers, no way, not even close. But I don't know, maybe a guy like me in those rooms might could help a little bit. Hey, let me tell you, all you people that are making the decision, how much the Division II and NAI and small college depends on this, right? We talk about college experience and stuff for the student athlete. Our guys at Angelo State, it was a kick-ass experience being able to go down and play UTEP. A national championship, Coach Haskins' name on the floor, Tim Floyd, Hall of Fame coach. McMurray, when we took that bus down there to Lamar and we played in a Division I arena against a big-time coach and Pat and good players. And I would think if you asked Lamar and UTEP, they benefited from those games too. All right, that's a long time, boy. I got emotional about that. All right, thanks.